How you doing, guys? Big Mac Dan School here again today, back once again with another episode of my Conquest series for you. Today we'll be taking a look through the pages of issue 46. One thing I want to say is make sure you check out the hobby corner for any building and painting tips. Over on the hobby corner, there's a lot more building and painting goes on there than here. I review the magazine and its content, whereas other channels out there review the building and painting side of it, and there are certain channels out there, like the Hobby Corner, that have started doing the playthrough of the tutorial missions that we've had in the first few issues. That's something I want to get around to eventually, but until I've got some painted models, I won't be doing that. So to start, what do we get this issue? We get some Death Guard reinforcements. We get in total 6 miniatures. One of them is a Death Guard vehicle. Another one is another Lord of Contagion, which makes it quite an exciting issue when we get to the back. And you'll find out more shortly. So this sprue that we get in here is one of the sprue from the Dark Imperium box, and it makes it difficult to judge the value. If you just divide the number of sprues, if you divide the price of the box by the number of sprues in it. When I got to this point in the editing process, I realised just how wrong I was with this part of my calculations. In total, there are 6 sprues in the box. It's a £95 box. Therefore, each sprue comes to a value of around £15.83p. Somewhere between £10–20 the value of the miniatures you're getting. However, if you were to break down the price of a Lord of Contagion by itself, that's a Death Guard character model. It's quite a big model as well, so it'd be £17.50 to £22.50, something like that. And then we've got the Foetid Bloat-Drone. I'm not sure of the price of the Foetid Bloat-Drone, to be honest, but it's a vehicle, so it's going to be £25 to £30, something like that, I'd say. And then we get 4 Plague Marines as well. You can't buy 4 Plague Marines as a set, but the 3 easy-to-build Plague Marines are £10. So you're looking at a value somewhere between £12.50 and upwards of £40. So it's somewhere in that price range, but difficult to judge, like I said. You can probably pick these miniatures up on eBay for under £30, so maximum, let's say, £30. Anyway, that's beside the point. We want to know what's inside the issue, don't we? Let's start with the front cover. So the front cover, you'll see here, it's Death Guard reinforcements, the Foetid Bloat-Drones, and so that's some lore about the Foetid Bloat-Drones inside, and detailed build and paint guides, which take up a lot of this issue. So, to start with, Foetid Bloat-Drone. Foetid Bloat-Drones labour through the air on buzzing turbine engines like armoured biomechanical flies. These hideous demon engines bring monstrous weapons to the battlefield to annihilate the cowering enemies of the Death Guard. They are demon engines, mobile support, specialisms are anti-infantry, anti-armour, biological warfare. This particular iteration that we get with the magazine is anti-infantry, really. And then the notable battles that they've taken part in is the invasion of Ultramar and the Paradaxian War. On to the next page. It goes into more detail talking about where the different types of Foetid Bloat-Drone actually on the next page. So it talks about the anti-armour version that can be armed with different weapons, and then it also mentions invading Ultramar. The Plague Wars saw Foetid Bloat-Drones deploy in huge numbers. The Ultramarines lost many warriors to devastating weapons of these crude demon engines. And now on to the next page, it's the Death Guard Armoury, the Death Guard War Gear, and it talks about the guns on the Bloat-Drone, but also the Bloat-Drone itself, the different parts of the Bloat-Drone that are of interest to someone who wants to learn more about them. So it talks first about the turbines, or it points to the turbines first. The demonic flesh, because it is a demon engine after all, so it's part demon, part machine. And then there's the Plague Probe, which is a little needle type thing on the front. I guess it almost looks like a nose, or a proboscis of a fly. And then the Plague Spitters are the weapon of choice on this particular version of the Bloat-Drone. And then onto the next page, it talks in more detail about the various weapons that it can be armed with, but unfortunately we don't get them on this sprue. So a pair of plague spritters can spray torrents of liquid and disease, rot and contagion over the enemy. For a bit more heavy hitting weapon, you want to go with a heavy blight launcher. It's great for, well, I think it's great for puncturing armour. It's better for taking on armour than the plague spritters, that's for sure. And then the Bloat-Drone sucks ammunition from a heavy blight launcher rust drum. And then the plague flies often accompany the Foetid Bloat-Drone into battle, so swarms of flies around this rotten, disgusting machine. The flesh mower is certain Bloat-Drones become hard to control and they just rush at the enemy and want to mow them down, so it'd be a waste to put any ranged weapons on them. So instead, some Bloat-Drones are fitted with these flesh mowers, which is basically like a meat grinder almost on the front of it, so as it flies towards the enemy it can just churn through them, and it's far more effective in close combat than the ranged variants. And then on to the next page, it's how to build Death Guard. We've got a variety of miniatures in this issue, so it means we've got a bigger how to build section. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages altogether for the how to build section. There are some extra parts on this sprue as well for a model that'll be completed in a future issue. We've had a sprue like that before, haven't we? So there's 2 lots of parts now that we've put to one side. I'm worried, I'm sure I'll have them somewhere, but the other parts that we've already put to one side for a future issue, I don't know where that sprue is. So there's a chance I've misplaced it, but I don't throw sprue out, I just keep it in a bag somewhere for using as like rubble on battlefields and stuff like that. But just make sure you do remember where you've put yours. Make sure if you do throw sprue out, you don't put the extra parts in the bin. So make sure you take off the extra parts before you throw the sprue out, or just keep it to one side on a shelf somewhere, ready for the future issue. And then it's on to how to paint Death Guard. Again, it's quite a large how to paint section because we've got a lot of a large variety of miniatures to paint. Whilst granted, they're all using more or less the same paints at some stage or another. The way the paint guides work in this, they like to show you exactly where to put those paints. Because it's a magazine aimed at beginners, so it does take up quite a big chunk of this. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of how to paint. So that's 12 pages taken up by how to build and how to paint. I think it's roughly 20 pages altogether, so there's only really 8 pages there of the sort of stuff that I like in the magazine, which is the lore and the gaming section. But of course, like I said, it's aimed at beginners, so it's understandable why they do that. Now, on to the gaming section, the rules. Mission 30, Power Struggle. Like I said, we've got a lot of contagion with this magazine. That Lord of Contagion is Lord Gangrus. Lord Gangrus. Lord Gangrus has been sent to Corvon 2 to take over Lord Felthius' command. Only the strongest of the two can win this war. Lord Felthius is angry at the arrival of a new rival. Wow, that's a weird sentence to say, isn't it? Lord Felthius is angry at the arrival of a new rival. He is determined to retain position and prove himself to Mortarion. So basically, Mortarion's like, well, this war's taking too long. Why haven't you won the planet yet? Why haven't you wiped the Ultramarines off the face of it? So he sent Lord Gangrus with his own forces in order to take over the what's the right word? Take over the charge of the war, basically, the charge of the Death Guard forces, and win the war quicker in his name. So turning to the scenario, you'll notice in the army section we've got Lord Gangrus's retinue and Lord Felthius' command. So it's Death Guard versus Death Guard for the very first time. That's the sort of thing you see in certain alien factions, certain chaos factions, non-Imperium factions typically. You see them come into blows. You do see Imperial factions come into blows, but I don't think we'll see it in the run of this magazine because we're just getting Ultramarines. Typically, a single chapter doesn't have a lot of infighting, and if it does, it tends to be more political and positioning rather than literally coming to blows on the battlefield. So we're not likely to ever see this for the Ultramarine side, but this is an interesting chance for, if you're collecting it with a friend, this magazine, it'll give your friend a chance to play with the Death Guard. If you're collecting the Death Guard miniatures and they're collecting the Ultramarines, it'll give your friend a chance to play with the Death Guard if they've not already done so. It'll give them a feel for how they work on the battlefield, and possibly tempt them to chaos, tempt them to the worship of Nurgle, and maybe they'll think about getting a second force for the first time, which many hobbyists do. I've got numerous forces, many of which are unbuilt and unpainted, so don't get too tempted early on when you're getting into this hobby to jump into a second army, unless you really like the variety, which is what draws me to armies. I like variety, I like different options. So, the battlefield. This is an unusual battle, as the Death Guard will be battling Death Guard. Rather than one player playing as Space Marines and the other as a Death Guard, each player must pick one of the two Death Guard forces to command. Lord Gangrus's retinue is made up of Lord Gangrus, 5 Plague Marines, a Rhino, Foetid Bloat-Drone. Something just came through the door. Noxious Blightbringer, and that's it. So 5 units there. Two of which are vehicles, 1 Rhino, 1 Foetid Bloat-Drone. And then Lord Felthius' command is Lord Felthius, his Tainted Cohort, so the Terminator guys, 3 of them. 5 Plague Marines, Mephitic Blight Hauler, and the Biologist Putrefier. So that's only 1 vehicle there, which is a Mephitic Blight Hauler. However, he has got the more heavily armoured Terminators on his side, so it's probably quite level in terms of number of wounds there. It'll be interesting to see how this battle's going to go, I think, and I'm sure you'll agree. The deployment, both players roll off the winner decides who deploys first. We've each got a allocated deployment zone. So on the Sector Imperialis map, we've got Gangrus's deployment zone, and on the Sector Mechanicus map, we've got Felthius' deployment zone. The players then alternate deploying their units, beginning with the player chosen to deploy first. After all units have been deployed, the player who finishes setting up their army first can choose to take the first or second turn. Both players roll to decide, the winner decide who deploys first. So you're deploying 1 unit at a time. So obviously, whoever deploys first will be the first player to set up. So if you win the roll to decide who deploys first, make sure you think about that. Do you want to take the first turn or do you want to take the second turn? You could, if you've got a fast unit in there, you could get all up in your enemy's face and take a big chunk out of their army before they even had a chance to move. So you might want to take the first turn. Alternatively, if you take the second turn, your opponent might close on you quite quickly, giving you a chance to charge in, because they were much closer to you than you would have been had you taken the first turn. So there's always something to think about with things like deployment and things like who takes first turn. Victory conditions. Victory conditions. Eliminate the enemy warlord. 3 victory points. First player to eliminate an enemy unit, 1 victory point. End the game with a unit in the enemy deployment zone, 1 victory point. The game lasts 5 battle rounds, so it could quite easily be a draw this. You could both eliminate the enemy warlord, giving you 3 points each. First player to eliminate an enemy player gains 1 victory point, but then the other player could get a unit in the enemy's deployment zone. So it could end up at 4-all, it could end up at 1-all. It's there's no tie-breaking rule here, but if you really did want to see who comes out on top and you get to 5 battle rounds, then play it for another turn if you've not got a winner. But you can just have it as a draw, of course, as well. On to the rules for the Foetid Bloat-Drone. Again, with the rules, I don't have to go into too much detail, because this is all the sort of stuff you should be paying for, really. But I will discuss briefly some of the key stats. So it's got a decreasing movement profile. With 6 to 10 plus wounds, it's 10 inches. 3 to 5 wounds, it's 8 inches. And 1 to 2 wounds, it's 6 inches. The strength, which is also the strength of the Plague Spitter, the strength is 6, 5 and 4. And the number of attacks in close combat are 3 to start, 2 with 3 to 5 wounds, and 1 to 2 wounds remaining. You just get 1 attack, so it's not amazing in close combat. What you really want to do is get up to the 9-inch range of the Plague Spitter, and use it as much as possible. Don't forget you've got 2 plague spitters as well, it's not just the one, so it's an assault D6 weapon. You roll your D6 or 2D6, and then that's how many shots you get, and they hit automatically. It's like an old school flamer weapon, what we used to have templates for, but the random number of shots is generated by the dice rather than the template. You can reroll wounds of 1 for the weapon, same as the plague spitter we've used before, and this weapon automatically hits its target. You can reroll wounds of 1 also for the plague probe, which is that pointy needle thing on the front of the vehicle. It's got a demon save, which is a 5-up invulnerable save, disgustingly resilient, same as old Death Guard, and putrid explosion. So when this is reduced to 0 wounds, roll a dice on a 4+. All units within 7 inches suffer 1 mortal wound. So that's quite a scary unit to be near when it's exploded. So what you might want to do when you're down to the fewest number of wounds, just charge it into your enemy and let them kill it. If they kill it, then their unit's going to take a mortal wound. So it's quite a handy tactic to have there. Well, if they kill it and you roll a 4-up, 4, 5 or 6, it's a 50-50 chance. Then you could force their unit to take a mortal wound. Not to mention the wounds you might do to them in combat. It also has the fly keyword, which you may remember from when we first got the Inceptors. Basically, it's the sort of thing is you can fly over units, so you don't have to go round a unit you want to avoid. You can just fly straight over it. You can fly over terrain and things like that. And then the Plague Spitter's strength, as I discussed, it's a decreasing profile based on the number of wounds remaining. And that's it for this issue. What are we getting in next week's issue? Like I said last week, we're getting the Land Speeder. So another vehicle for the Space Marines, which is exciting stuff. And then the following week, it's Space Marines again. We're getting 2 bikes. So, not only next week are they getting a very fast vehicle in the Land Speeder, they're getting some very fast, not quite vehicles. Bikes in Warhammer 40,000 aren't treated as vehicles. Not that there's much difference between vehicles and non-vehicles anymore, because they used to have, in older versions of the game, they used to have specific rules for them, but now it's like more of an overlapping ideology. An overlapping... Basically, they're more similar now. I can't think of the right words. So we're getting Land Speed next week, 2 Space Marine bikes the following week. So it's 2 Space Marine issues in a row. It's exciting times for Space Marine players after the Death Guard have received these reinforcements. And I think they'll need those vehicles, the vehicle and the bikes, in order to try and combat what we've seen the Death Guard get this time. It's exciting stuff. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll leave it there, and I'll see you on the battlefield.